What's going on, y'all? Off the cuff here. Appreciate you guys tuning in for another video. In my previous video, Julius Evola and Protestant relativism, I had mentioned that I was kind of dabbling in Spengler, The Decline of the West, and the same guy who had offered me the Spengler text also suggested Julius Evola, and I really liked Julius Evola's work as well. But I didn't really go too much into Spengler and what I had kind of taken away from what he was trying to get at. Now, as a disclaimer, Spengler is not the easiest person to understand. He is very much ambiguous. The way that he writes can be a little bit hard for simple guys. Like I consider myself a simple guy to wrap your head around. Like I was busting out Spark Notes a lot, and I was busting out summaries to try to wrap my head around it. And I didn't get all the way through the book, but I did want to point out a interesting part of the book that I thought was extremely fascinating, and that was this comparison between his ideas and the Nietzschean take on the Greek tragedy of ancient Greece. And what Nietzsche kind of was alluding at, or at least according to Spengler, was that you had a beautiful type of tranquility and a beautiful balance in the former half, or like the up and coming half of the Greek tragedy. And that was, there was always this duality between Apollo, which was the god of light, the god of righteousness, of justice, pretty much the hero archetype, and then the self-indulgent Dionysus. And in the middle of that are the chorus, which represent the people. So pretty much you have the hero archetype with Apollo, which represents everything that's good, everything that's virtuous, everything that a man should aspire to be. And on the opposite side, you have Dionysus, who is the god of wine and gluttony and hedonism and all this stuff. And the chorus is man, and they're kind of fighting in between. They're kind of fighting in between this chorus of which is supposed to be the regular people. Every once in a while, there'll be somebody who steps out of the chorus and will take on the role of the extreme glutton and the everything that's bad with humanity. And then sometimes you'll have guys that go the opposite direction, and there'll be extreme examples of an archetype of what it means to be a just man, a courageous man, a virtuous man, essentially. And according to Spengler, Nietzsche's idea of this was that this was good. It did not overcomplicate things, and it made it easy for people to follow without there being too much hubbub about nitpicking at certain things. It served as a representation of what was possible as a man, and really framing this duality between good and evil, or self-indulgence and selflessness, in a way that people could easily understand and kind of relate with. And only when in the latter half, during the time of Plato, did another playwright come around. And I forgot his name, but he started overcomplicating the situation. He started nitpicking at things. This is during the time of Socrates too, and Socrates in himself represented this idea of the intellectual now becoming the prominent member of society, and the guy who is going to be leading the people down a more enlightened path so that they understand things in a more nuanced way, and in a way where the scholar is now the person to drive to be like, as opposed to like the warrior, or like the great the great religious leader, or so on and so forth. And the problem with this is that that archetype of the former, what I was talking about, the leader or the virtuous man versus the man who is just completely beholden to his vices, that's kind of shattered, and it's made overly complicated by asking questions about this very simple premise. I think that is a really interesting question. Is are the so-called experts really doing a net good for humanity as a whole, or in Spengler's case, the culture in itself. I haven't read the entire book, but I know in the latter chapters he talks about the injection of the intellectual in the civilization phase of the decline of the or in civilizations. They all descend, they get to it, or they all ascend, they get to the peak, and then they go on to descend. And this can range anywhere from 500 years to 2,000 years. It just depends on how quickly they adopt these policies. But they all have this one thing in common, that they all have these intellectuals, these experts, who are kind of placed into the society right at the start of the decline. And I think that that's the point to take away from with this comparison, is that everything is good whenever, or everything run. I don't want to say good, but everything runs relatively well without people asking questions that they don't need to ask. For instance, I'd say like a contemporary or like a modern day example of that is people picking at video games, for an example, or like the video game industry. The video game industry is not meant to be platforms or springboards for like political ideas. The premise of video games back when they first came out was just to have fun with them. I remember Space Invaders, I remember Asteroids, I remember Super Mario Brothers. These are just fun games. They were just meant as time wasting fuel, essentially. But like, it was a fun distraction, and the whole point of them was to give you this little microcosm of time to where you can kind of detach, and it was just meant to have fun. But then whenever graphics started getting better, whenever computers started getting better, now you can kind of resemble people in video games in a more realistic form, to where now you can kind of construct a narrative around this, and it will seem a little bit more realistic, because the people more so look like people than they did in Super Mario Brothers. And then we have the experts that came in right around 2010, 11, 12, where you had folks like Anita Sarkeesian, and I'm going to talk about Gamergate here. I'm not an expert on the subject or anything, but I know that they injected politics into games, and the whole premise of games was just to have fun. And whenever the experts came in and started dictating the nuanced ideas, or like the bad ideas of games, and that they like Tomb Raider, for instance, was a thing that Anita Sarkeesian had a problem with. Nobody had a problem with Tomb Raider. It was just a game about raiding tombs and hopping around. The game wasn't particularly good, but like it was a harmless game. It was just meant to be you're an explorer, and kind of like Indiana Jones, and you're Laura Croft. She's a charismatic character. She has a British accent, all this other stuff. And it was just meant to be a lighthearted, fun game. I guarantee you the people who developed that game, they didn't think it was going to be a political statement a decade from whenever they made it. But that's what it turned into whenever the experts came and diagnosed it. Now we have a totally different Tomb Raider. She doesn't have gigantic tits anymore, and now she's a student of archaeology, and like it's and she doesn't take any gump from the male characters and what have you. And by the way, the new Tomb Raider games, they are good, but that's not the point. The point is that they are meddling in something that didn't have a problem to begin with, and over time it's going to deteriorate or draw away from the purpose of the game, which is to have fun. And I think that that's what Nitschke is talking about in Spengler's explanation of it, is that the idea of the virtuous man was that he is a good husband, a good father. He provides for his family. He is a selfless person in the community. All of those things were agreed upon to be good. And every once in a while, you can dabble in the Dionysus side, but like you have to strike a balance. It's whenever people started asking questions like, why is this good? Why is this bad? Even though it had already been constructed in kind of like a metaphysical sense, like you couldn't actually put it on paper. It was a feeling. But when people started questioning that feeling, then all hell seemed to break loose, and it was very detrimental, or at least according to Spengler here, it was a very detrimental effect that it had on society. People just understood that certain things were taboo. I kind of went over that with Evola too, with the people criticizing the pharaoh, or the religious and gubernatorial leaders of the ancient world. It was seen as taboo because they were the ultimate say-so according to the divine right of the kings, essentially. And it messed with that order, which was that we got our spiritual guidance from this almighty creator all the way down to the lowliest farmhand, or the lowliest peasant. And they understood their place in society. I thought it was a really interesting take that Spengler had, because I never thought of it that way. I don't really know Nietzsche too much. He's a little bit of a black pill for me personally. But I think this is a really good comparison. I think Spengler adding on to it was a very interesting thing. And like, this might not be like something that's super enlightening, or like this new concept. I'm sure people have talked about it before, but to me, I thought it was interesting, and I never really seen things through that lens of like, we always had the option to ask why, but is it really a good idea to ask why? Like, just be happy with just be happy with the way that things are, and don't question a good thing. So anyway, my dog's getting antsy down here. You probably hear the jingle of his collar. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting idea. And I was wondering what you guys thought about it too. So if you want, go ahead and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Have a wonderful day, guys, and God bless you.